I'd like to call a Garden Grove City Council meeting to order. Madam Clerk, would you please call roll?
Councilmember Beard. Councilmember Broadwater.
Here.
Councilmember Wynn. Mayor Pro Tem Jones. Here. Mayor Dalton.
Here. Okay, we're going to have two items that we're going to have a study session and also a closed session item. The first study session item will be on Economic Development Administration grant. Is there anyone here? I'll open our communications for that. Is there anyone here that would like to speak on that? Okay, seeing none, I'll close our communications, and we will have a closed session item, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9B, and one potential case. I'd like to open our communications. Is there anyone here who would like to speak on that? Okay, seeing none, we will recess to the study session.
We had to turn off our own mics. Yeah.
I'd like to call a Garden Grove City Council meeting to order. Madam Clerk, would you please call roll?
Councilmember Beard.
Here.
Councilmember Broadwater.
Here.
Councilmember Wynn. Here. Mayor Pro Tem Jones.
Here.
Mayor Dalton.
Here. We'll have the invocation by Kingsley Okereke and the Pledge of Allegiance by Councilwoman Wynn.
Please stand, let's pray. Dear Lord, we ask that you be with us this evening as we consider the issues before us and seek to make the best decisions that meet the needs of our beloved city of Garden Grove. Please, Lord, strengthen our purpose and grant that in serving our community we may serve you. Amen.
Amen.
Please place the flag and say the pledge with me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, at this time we'll go to our communications for the council and the agency. Verla Lambert.
First up.
Good evening. I'm Verla Lambert, lived here for 54 years in Garden Grove. Have a little bit on the EIR reports that we get every now and then. I'm going to start off with my favorite thing is maintenance and maintaining what we already have would go a long ways to improving Garden Grove. How many PUDs and other projects have been put through in the last 5 years or so with no impact, no significant impact? This will catch up with us soon, if it's not already. Such as the PUDs on Trask and the one at Palm and Harbor, where the cars are already parking on the west side of Palm Street facing south. It's an accident waiting to happen, and this does impact my neighborhood. Some of us still walk for exercise, but no one is giving up their cars. Please keep this in mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard Prinzler.
Good evening, Mayor, staff. I'm Richard Prinzler. I've been in Garden Grove since 1958. The other day, I had some of the senior citizens that we usually meet, and I tried to get some of them to come down here, and if I was to tell you what they told me, you'd throw me out of here. And that's the truth. And this is not only from Garden Grove, this is also from the senior citizens of Anaheim, where we have this coffee every morning. They mentioned, one thing they mentioned about is the traffic on Main Street and Garden Grove Boulevard making a left turn or right turn. They would like to see a study made or something pertaining to a left turn and a right turn signal off of going north and south. You have one east and west, go one north and south, because there has been quite a few accidents over there, and it is hard to get out of there. The other day, I went, you talk about, first of all, you talk about buying in Garden Grove. The other day, I had to go down the street to the store in Fountain Valley, came back up New Hope. And as I got to Garden Grove Boulevard, I see them doing some street repair and fixing the traffic lights and so forth. And what caught my attention was the license plate on the back of the truck, Arizona. Went by it. Here, people are from Arizona working on our stuff. Can't we find a distributor or a builder or something to do our electrical work? Maybe not from Garden Grove or Santa Ana or Orange County, but somewhere in California. Or do we have to ship all of our thing out of state? The other thing I want to talk about was redeveloping fee that I've heard you people talk about. Have to pay the state $8 million, was it? What I want to know is how much does it cost us to maintain that every year? And I know somebody here can tell me how much it costs the city to maintain that redeveloping thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Peggy Bergen.
Uh, 30 years and counting, Peggy Bergen resident. My first item that I want to bring up is consent item 7A, which is for Mesothelioma Awareness Day, which is going to be, I believe it's Monday, September 26th. That's very near and dear to me because that is what my husband died of, and very few people know anything about the disease or what causes it. So the more and more we see it out there in the public, maybe more people will become aware. They will become more aware when they're doing house repairs, when they're having people come in, when they buy things for their house to go in, that to make sure there is absolutely no asbestos. And unfortunately, there is a very popular wallboard coming in from China that has this cute little tag on the side that says acceptable amounts of asbestos in this. They might as well be saying acceptable amounts of mesothelioma are being shipped to your country. There is no such thing as acceptable. If you are susceptible to the disease, you can get it from one strand or thousands. There's no acceptable amount. So thank you very much for making that a part of your agenda every year and accepting my request every year. Thank you again, Matt, for seeing to that. Now, another thing, which is a consent item, is number 7C, and I noticed one utility truck from Theodore Robbins Ford in Costa Mesa. And I did read on, and it said no bids came in from Garden Grove. To be quite honest, I bought my car in Costa Mesa as well because, well, the price was good and was the color I wanted, bright blue, and basically, the two places I stopped in Garden Grove, they just looked like if I found a car, you go ahead and buy it, because I didn't want to buy a brand-new car. That's not exactly customer service to me. So, but I am very glad that you bought a car in a nearby city where you'll be able, if there's any problems, you can go be seen to without a lot of issues. And there was one item for consideration that I kind of couldn't understand what it actually meant, that we're subordinating a loan. That is 10A on the council and 4B on the agency. But when I kind of read through all of the complex pages of this, it seemed to say to me that we're just replacing one existing loan with another loan, basically to the benefit of the tenants of the property so that they can upgrade their property. And that sounds like a win-win for both of us, that rather than us stop the progress of the property, make it more acceptable to have people live there in a safe fashion. So that does seem to be a very, very good project, a good idea, but when you hear words like subordination and that, we're just wondering, whoa, what's going on here? But anyways, that's basically what I want to say, and I will comment on that corner that Verla was talking about on Palm Street, which is about 2 blocks from the signal that we use to go into our house, and there was never a parked car there before on that street. Now there are parked cars morning, noon, and night, and there's this one cute little grayish car that is just begging someone to rear-end them, because the minute the median stops, they park right there. So if you have an extra wide car and you're making that basically left-hand turn off of Harbor onto that, they are going to be rear-ended. Now this is from a project that was okayed probably 4 to 5 years ago that said they had more than adequate parking for the tenants. Now since the car is there at 8 o'clock at night, 9 o'clock in the morning, all the time, obviously that car belongs to someone in there. It's not a Sunday visitor. So there is not adequate parking, and that facility is only probably 2/3 full or finished. So what's going to happen when all 130-odd places are full? Because some of the units are 3 bedrooms with an open space room, which means they've got room to have 2 to 3 going to work adults in there. So keep an eye on these projects, that you do not go for minimal parking requirements. Nowadays, we need to go for maximum or more, because people have visitors and people do not have 2 adults per a 3-bedroom unit. Not at the price of mortgage payments nowadays. Thank you very much.
David Terry Lotherborn.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, staff, people of Garden Grove. November 21st, 1963. November 21st, 1963. A very important date that we should all remember like we remember 9/11. Do you know what happened on that day?
Kennedy assassination?
Yes, correct. Thank you, Chris. Good evening. I'm David Lotherborn. I live at 12251 Hampton Avenue in Garden Grove. I've been there for 48 years. I moved in there on that day. We had an orange grove. We had a small school. We had very nice atmosphere for my children to grow up in, a boy and a girl. Today, that's not so. I don't even have a place that I can say is good for 2 of the senior people of Garden Grove, and that's my wife and I. We have noise abatement. We have trash abatement. We have people throwing things over a 12.5-foot wall into my property and my neighbors. I have rats running the wall and the wires there on my property and along with my neighbors. The people that stay over at the hotels, the 3 hotels right there, sometimes come over to my house because they see my plumeria trees and they want a cutting. And I usually give them a couple cuttings. Some people from Oregon, some people from Washington, some people from New York. I have to tell them, I don't think it's going to grow in New York. And the people in New York, in Oregon and Washington, I tell them they got to put them in a hothouse in order to get that tree to grow. Everybody likes those plumeria brushes. I have over 14 varieties. And I'm willing to share with my neighbor. I share my avocados, I share my tomatoes, I share my environment, I keep my property clean. That doesn't say my neighbors do. I don't have the same neighbors I had when 5 years ago. People have picked up and moved out. Why? Noise, trash, rats, out of control. I call the code enforcement over people parking junk cars in the street. They take the message and I never hear from them again. An incident, story, true story, called the City of Garden Grove. The code enforcement. There was a car parked out in front of my property. It had the hood, front hood was missing from it. The windshield was smashed to beat. Nobody could drive it. And they says, has the car been there for longer than 72 hours? I says, this car has been there for over a week. Is that longer than 72 hours? They says, well, we'll send somebody out there. 2 weeks later, I come home, and there's a white van pulled in front of my driveway in the back of that one car. And out comes this one gentleman, and he walks over to me. He says, do you live here? I says, I think. And he says, well, I'm with the California Highway Patrol. This car was stolen from up north, San Francisco area. And I said, how did it get here like that? He says, we don't know. But don't go near the car. I got it marked off. This is the kind of stuff that's happening to me and my neighbors right there on Hampton Avenue. How do I stop this? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Robin Macario.
Good evening, council, staff, Garden Grove residents. I'm Robin Marcario, lifelong resident here in Garden Grove. I just wanted to take the opportunity during oral communications to make a couple of constructive comments. The recent notification on the city website, which gave a nice printable notification and neighborhood meetings for the water infrastructure improvements that will go from one end of the city to the other. I thought that was very constructive and informative for the residents in general. I also think it's fabulous that we're putting solar panels on our public buildings, including Public Works and just recently the police station. The turf removal program that you're undertaking that's dealing with our city street medians is certainly, they're being updated with the drought-resistant plants. I also undertook to take out some of my turf or grass in front of our lawn. There's a wonderful program put out by the Municipal Water District of Orange County, and they've put together this turf removal program, and you apply for this program before you take out your grass. And then the program will sort of give you a rebate roughly to the amount of about $1 per square foot to help cover some of those costs. It basically covered half of the costs of my 700 square feet. That program will certainly help reduce water usage. So I certainly would encourage anybody in the city to look at that turf removal program. That's with the Municipal Water District of Orange County. And just in closing, I'm pleased to see that our city is implementing cost-effective, progressive programs such as the solar panels and the drought-resistant landscaping. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Peter Katz.
Good evening, everyone. I'm here once again to remind everyone that the traveling wall will be here in the city of Garden Grove from October 6th through 10th. And during that time frame, we will be honoring the 41 soldiers that gave their lives in the defense of freedom for the city of Garden Grove in the Vietnam War. The Vietnam War Museum of America Foundation is hosting, as part of this event, a dinner under the stars at the Moving Wall. It's a fundraiser for a dream that I have, and this council supported in bringing a Vietnam War museum to the city of Garden Grove, something that the city can take a lot of pride in. The guest speaker that night will be one of the foremost authors on the war, Joe Galloway. His book, We Were Soldiers Once and Young, is still considered one of the two best books written about the war. And I hope the residents of the city will come out and support the endeavor of the museum. If anyone has any memorabilia from the war, we're going to be having a museum at the gymnasium in the park. And we want to display your memorabilia and your events. The items will be logged and cataloged by the police department and will be guarded 24 hours a day. But let me say what we're talking a lot about development here tonight, and people are worried about jobs in the economy. This is going to be a shot in the arm when it's built for the city of Garden Grove, not just because it's a museum, but because it becomes a catalyst for money coming into a city. There are so many opportunities that can be generated with a project of this kind. New hotels, new restaurants, new retail, licensing fees for T-shirts, books, concerts. There's so much that can be done with this, and I hope the city gets behind it 100%. The intangibles of free advertising in Asian travel agencies, airline advertising will come free to bring people to this area, and people will be staying in Garden Grove hotels, not Anaheim hotels, because they want to stay and see the museum and take the trolley to Disneyland instead. So we have a great opportunity to bring some revenue dollars to the city with this project and its surrounding events. It can become an anchor point for the pride of our Vietnam heritage in the community. When they celebrate the festival, it can be part of the events for the city itself. So I think it can be used for fundraising events, for so many different ideas. So please support this project. Come out, take a look at the wall. People gave their lives in defense of freedom, so we can come here tonight and argue our differences and resolve our problems. But many countries don't have that opportunity. Many countries don't change city councils and politicians and move on with their lives. They go through a lot of bloodshed every time there's an election and every time they raise their voices. So let's not forget that some of our sons and daughters gave their lives so that we can be here tonight. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Tony Flores.
Good evening, Mayor, staff, council. My name is Tony Flores. Just a couple of comments. I noticed on the Garden Grove Journal of September 8th, 2008, a couple of headlines here. One's a legal fight over the water park evictions. I know you're having some issues with that. The relocation plan was changed once. 1.3 million, I guess, was set up, or that was the estimate to move folks out. It's dropped under that, but there's no information here talking about the legal costs for our side and for theirs. If that information is forthcoming, I'd like to know where to find it. The second question that I have regarding the water park, I addressed this council in October of 2010 and asked about the Melrose tax, the Melrose tax. We're going to put up $5 million according to the DDA, the Disposition and Development Agreement, for a parking structure. This will be the fourth parking structure we've put money up, or a facility, and it's yet to be built. The question that I have here, and I'm reading from the footnote of the analysis from the developer. Developer subsidy consists of $5 million contribution toward parking garage construction. And it says on the second page, parking garage construction costs not included as they will be funded through a Melrose. Has that been taken care of yet? I haven't seen the follow-up or heard of it, but I'd like to know. Who can I get back to? I know you're appointed, Mr. Beard, and you're in West Garden Grove now, and you're our councilman, even though we didn't vote for you, but you're out there, and I'd like to talk with you a little further. We've talked about a number of things that I've yet to hear you discuss here at the council. Maybe we'll have a chance to go over a few more things. I can show you the details of it so you can actually bring up the issues and actually be a representative of our folks out there. The other issue here is redistricting splits Fountain Valley, leaves Staten in second. And I'm going to read just a section of it, but apparently the Orange County districts for supervisors were divided up recently. And here's an interesting paragraph. The first is represented by Janet Nguyen, a former member of the Garden Grove City Council. The slice of Fountain Valley north of Warner is heavily Vietnamese, and the change was an effort to keep the largest number of Vietnamese voters in the same district. Let's change a couple of words. Let's put in James Earl Ray where Janet Nguyen's at, and we'll put in white where Vietnamese. James Earl Ray, that's the gentleman who killed Martin Luther King. Remember him? Let's read this again. The first represented by James Earl Ray, a former Garden Grove council member. The slice of Fountain Valley north of Warner is heavily white, and the change was an effort to keep the largest number of white voters in the same district. That sounds kind of racist. Okay? We need to stop that nonsense. We're Americans. Not brown, white, red, whatever. We're Americans. And why we keep playing this game, that's what keeps us divided. Okay? Keeps us all divided. I've talked a number of times here about putting districts in the city of Garden Grove for better representation, accountability, and accessibility to a council member. Now, when I talk about that, certain folks of the Vietnamese community say that's bad because they won't get their vote in. We're Americans, first and foremost. Let's remember that, folks. Anybody who wants to be reminded, y'all have my phone number. I'll talk to you any time, any day. Thanks for your time.
Charles Mitchell.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, and staff. Earlier this year, my wife and I were able to take a cruise in the Caribbean. It was a wonderful trip. We visited a lot of places and had a great time. One of the stops was Puerto Rico, and we took a bus tour along the coast, and there was this one area. It was a beautiful white beach, light blue water, marvelous place. And the bus driver told us that's called Squatter's Cove. And he explained, we can't really leave it open for tourists anymore because so many people have come there just to visit and built up shacks and other structures, and nothing was done about it. And now that whole area is nothing but shacks and shanties and people living there, and that whole beach area is no longer a nice recreation area for the rest of the population. And the reason I bring this up is the fact that we have a similar situation in Gardner Grove with the mobile home park and the residents there. Now, my understanding is that that was only a travel park, and that people who came to stop there would have their trailers or their mobile homes, and they would be limited to a certain amount of time, and then they would have to move. Unfortunately, nothing was done to enforce this provision, and the city is also responsible for this because they didn't do anything to make sure that these rules were enforced. So people have been living in the same place for up to 13 years, and they were only supposed to be there for 30 days or 60 days. That's unreasonable. Now, the current lawsuit that's being waged against the city because these residents feel that they have entitlement to be there, and the city has no right to have them move. I'm sorry, but I'm not unsympathetic to these people and their need to have a stable place to live. But I think that they are being a little bit on the pushy side when they are claiming squatters' rights to this travel location, and the city should do what it can to relocate these people. I think they've made some fair offers. I think the people should consider that as reasonable and see if they can find another place to settle that will suit all of their needs. But I think they have taken advantage of the city, and the city is at fault for letting them do that. But I think this should be settled so that we can move on and get what needs to be done so we can get started on the development on Harbor Boulevard with our water park. Thank you.
Thank you. Bob Walker.
I'm Bob Walker. It's already been hit on by Verla and Peggy, but I'm complaining about the parking there on Harbor and Palm. When that condo was built, it was no problem because you guys had a painted island in there, so when people park there, you can kind of go around them. Now you have a concrete island. And the other day, you actually had a UPS truck parked there. People were making a left-hand turn. Nobody can get around him. And there was cars actually blocking traffic in Harbor till he decided, got his business done and left. Another time we had a full-size, it was a Garden Grove truck, matter of fact, that actually had to pull up on the sidewalk so people can get around him. And my concern is, or my wishes are, maybe you guys can wave your magic wand and get the right person or company out there and paint that curb area red so people can at least get around them, because it is a dangerous situation there. Also, the parking is so bad. I actually watch people park in our track as you first pull in on Palm off Garden Grove and walk down to the condos for a birthday party. There's no parking. And then I'd also, we talked about blighted all the time. I would like to see our tax-paying money going back into maybe my track and have the streets redone, because they're a mess. It'd be nice if you guys can maybe check in on that for us, so it doesn't. I mean, you tell everybody, hey, you know what? Pick up your house, clean up your house, clean up your yard. Look at the street. You know what I'm saying? It's bad. That's all I got to say. Thank you much.
Thank you. At this time, we'll close oral communications, and we'll go to the agency.
Ms. Bennett, will you please call roll for the agency?
Member Beard?
Here.
Member Dalton?
Here.
Member Jones?
Here.
Vice Chair Wynn?
Here.
Chair Broadwater?
Here. Okay, at this time, we've had roll call, oral communications. Let's go to consent items.
Mr. Chairman, I believe the council's still in session for these items. There's a couple
For the joint.
This is
joint items.
Yes.
Okay. You have item 2A and regarding agency action and city council action in relation to the redevelopment reforms, and it's recommended that these items be acted on simultaneously unless a separate discussion is requested.
Any questions for staff?
Move it.
Second.
Second.
I had a motion and a second. Call for the vote.
Motion received, 5 yes votes.
Okay, let's go to items for consideration.
Mr. Chairman, your first item is assignment and assumption agreement with Century Village Group and KB Homes, and Jim Delalong is here to give a staff report on this item.
Hold on one second. Mr. Chairman, I'm going to recuse myself on this one because I have a business relationship with somebody who's affected by this.
Very good.
Thank you, Mr. Fertal. Good evening, Mayor and members of the council and chair and members of the agency. The item before you for your consideration is an assignment and assumption agreement between Century Village Group and KB Home Coastal for the development of 53 townhomes on a portion of the Century Triangle. On April 13, 2010, the agency approved a disposition and development agreement with Century Village Group for the development of a 2.67-acre portion of the Century Triangle at the northwest corner of Taft Street and Century Boulevard. As part of the agreement, the developer was to pay the agency $4 million for the site. A few months later, the agency approved an amendment to the DDA that would allow him to pay the agency $3 million at close of escrow, and through a promissory note, the remaining $1 million would be paid over time as units were sold. In late August 2011, staff met with representatives of Century Village Group and KB Home Coastal regarding the potential transfer of the DDA and First Amendment to KB Home Coastal. KB Home Coastal is willing to take on all of the DDA requirements, and the $1 million promissory note will be paid off in full at close of escrow. KB Home Coastal is a wholly owned subsidiary of KB Home. KB Home has been a part of Southern California residential development for over 40 years, and KB's most recent Garden Grove development is the Lori Lane project located on Fairview Street just south of the 22 freeway. Staff and agency counsel have reviewed KB Home and KB Home Coastal's qualifications and concluded that this builder is qualified and financially capable of assuming the rights, title, and interests in and to the DDA. As outlined in the agenda report, staff recommends the agency consent to the assignment and assumption agreement and authorize the director to execute the consent of agency to assignment and any other pertinent documents required to effectuate the assignment and assumption agreement. This concludes my presentation, and staff is available to answer questions. In addition, Jim Barisic, representing Century Village Group, is in attendance if needed for questions.
Okay, any questions for staff? Hearing none, I entertain a motion.
I move the item.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Call for the vote.
Motion received, 4 yes votes.
Okay, let's go to 4B, and somebody who is going to give that to us explain what loan subordination means.
You're lucky, Mr. Jim Delalonga will be able to do that for you, Mr. Chairman.
Glad to hear it.
Great. Well, what we're going to do is, right now, the agency has a loan agreement and a regulatory agreement that is on those properties because we lent them money to assist in the purchase of those properties. Those our two agreements are subordinate or in second position to the main loan that is on those properties. And so in order to do a new loan, which the developer is proposing to do the improvements to the property, they have to resubordinate us in second position on the new loan as it was in the second loan. So that's kind of what subordination is for this particular project.
So we have a second on it.
Basically,
more
kind of, yes.
likely it's a second, and we're going to keep a second on it.
Correct.
And that's what loan subordination means.
Yes.
Good.
So with that, again, you have two actions. First one is with the city council, and the second one is an agency. So if I can get a motion to adopt the council resolution at this time.
Bill?
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
I have motion second. Call for the vote.
Motion received, 5 yes votes.
Okay, same action for the agency. I entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Call for the vote.
Motion received, 5 yes votes.
Matters from agency members. Hearing none, at this time we will close the agency and take a recess. You want me to say why?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, please.
We are going to take a recess because there's a cake in the other room.
4.
And that cake is to commemorate or celebrate, I guess celebrate's a better word, celebrate a wedding anniversary, a 50th year wedding anniversary. It's not every day that they happen, but our mayor is celebrating his 50th wedding anniversary. So,
Let them eat cake.
okay, but his wife was supposed to.
Okay, I'd like to reconvene the Garden Grove City Council meeting. Let the record show that all members are present. And Mr. Broadwater was kind enough to take a break, and I was surprised, and I got a cake. And I want to thank Kim Hoy, because apparently she was the one that did all this, and I thought I was a smart cop. I guess I've been out of the business too long. She fooled me, and everybody here fooled me. So 50 years is a long time. Thank you very much, and I appreciate everyone celebrating cake with me. Okay, we'll go to consent items.
Mr. Mayor, it's recommended that items 7A through 7J?
H.
L.
No, J.
Be acted on simultaneously unless a separate discussion
L.
or actions requested by a council member.
Got a meeting
Mayor, I'm
left.
going to recuse myself from 7I, so I'm going to pull 7I, but I'd like to move the balance.
Second?
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Call for the vote.
Motion received, 5 yes votes.
Okay, now we have public hearings.
No, you need to take a separate action on 7I.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see that. Excuse me. Do I hear a motion?
I move.
You have a motion and a second. Call for the vote.
Motion received, 4 yes votes.
Okay, we go to public hearings.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, your first public hearing, 8A, is a 2010-11 Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report, and Monica Covarrubias is here to give us staff report on this.
Thank you, Mr. Fertel. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. The item you have before you is the 2010-11 Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report, also known as a CAPER. Federal law requires that all jurisdictions who receive Community Development Block Grant, Home Investment Partnership, and Emergency Service Grant funds assess the activities implemented during the program year and report accomplishments through the CAPER. During the program year, the city utilized its resources to expand and preserve the affordable housing, fund safety improvements, and assist seniors, those at risk of becoming homeless. The public review and comment period for the CAPER began on August 26th and continues until the conclusion of the public hearing tonight. So far, no comments have been received. Last night, the CAPER was presented to the Neighborhood Improvement and Conservation Commission. The commission had no comments and recommended that the CAPER be transmitted to council. Tonight, you are asked to hold a public hearing to collect public input, accept and report, and direct staff to submit the CAPER to HUD. This concludes my staff report, and I'm available to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Any questions for staff? Okay, hearing none, I'll open a public hearing. Is there anyone here that would like to speak on this matter? Mr. Latherborn.
Don't you have a pink card for me?
Yeah, you don't, we,
Eight.
this is, yeah, you're 8B.
Here, you do have 8Bs right here.
Yeah, okay. So you don't want to speak on 8A. Anyone here else who would like to speak? Okay, hearing none, I'll close the public hearing for 8A.
Excuse me, Mayor, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
I mean, I jumped up on 8A and I...
No, it's okay. Don't worry. No problem. Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
So move.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. Call for the vote.
Motion received, 5 yes votes.
Okay, 8B. However, at this time, I'll recuse myself. I believe 8B, there's a conflict, and Councilman Broadwater and I, because we own property in the area.
That's
Okay,
correct.
so I'll lead and I'll defer to staff for a report on this item.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, 8B is a public hearing to consider a general plan amendment and a code amendment regarding a mixed-use zoning proposal for various sites in the city, and Susan Emery is here to give a staff report on this item.
Good evening. Tonight we are pleased to present to you the zoning standards for the mixed-use areas of the community. This represents a significant modification to our current zoning code. As you know, back in 2008, we adopted a new general plan that called for multiple mixed-use areas throughout the community. Mostly these are in commercial zoned areas in Garden Grove. The new standards will allow greater flexibility and opportunity for multiple land uses. Though the economy has slowed down much since 2008, mixed use will remain a viable concept for the future. Bringing together commercial and residential land uses accomplishes goals for improved transportation, improved air quality, a variety of new types of housing products, and ease of access for commercial uses. The housing element of the general plan met state-mandated requirements for density and air quality issues by including mixed-use concepts in that plan. It is not often the city attempts a wide-scale update of the zoning code. The effort is long and requires much study, review, and discussion with the public. Staff has undertaken several outreach efforts to engage the public in this process. These efforts include setting up a separate web page where residents could review plans and documents and leave comments, conducting stakeholder meetings that included property owners, city council, and planning commission members, also involved citizens and staff. We had separate meetings with property owners in the Korean Business District to gain their input and suggestions. We met with mixed-use developers to review our standards and asked them for their comments as to whether our standards were realistic and workable. We have incorporated the suggestions we've received from all of these individuals and planning commissioners in our documents that you're about to review this evening. Tonight represents the culmination of an approximately 18-month effort that began with the hiring of Hogle Ireland and John Kaliski. Our consultants have been instrumental in providing good advice, creative ideas, and keeping the task on schedule and within budget. I'd like to recognize the staff who are responsible for this effort. Under the always capable leadership of Carl Hill, we also had Monica Caruvias, Lee Marino, and Aaron Webb. I'd like to thank all of them for their hard work and their positive attitude on this project. With that, I would like to now turn the presentation over to John Kaliski, who will walk you through the process and the key elements of the proposed zoning code update. After his presentation, John, staff, and myself are here to answer your questions.
Well, thank you, Susan, and good evening, council members, and thank you. I have to thank staff also. It was a very, very wonderful effort and a collaborative effort, and whatever Susan may say about our contribution to it, their contribution is actually very, very significant. We have a presentation. We'll try to go very quickly through it. It's meant to be an overview and conceptual, and so if there are technical questions, we may get into those in this question period that Susan referred to. As Susan mentioned, we were hired, Hogle Ireland Urban Studio, to basically help produce what we called a form-based code for the mixed-use districts. Why were we doing this? Well, in 2008, the City of Garden Grove passed a new general plan amendment, and through that process, it was determined that some of the areas in the city, mainly along Garden Grove Boulevard and some of the mixed-use districts, and in the Civic Center, it made sense to open up the code or open up the general plan to allow for mixed-use projects to be placed in those areas. In order to implement the general plan, you have to have a zoning code that actually recognizes these designations that are in the general plan, and that's what we were basically brought on to do. The proposed regulations that we're talking about are zone-specific regulations. They basically provide standards and guidelines, and they, in essence, control the land uses that are allowed in the mixed-use zones. There are also, some of them are very specific to individual zones. Some of them basically apply to all the zones. Let me move on. As Susan mentioned, we went through, in our involvement in the process, which started about last December 2010, a fairly extensive process to get public input. In January, we met with stakeholders. There were about 20 different meetings that we had with a range of different people, from developers to individual property owners to organizations. A website was formed, which is still up. In February, we had a community workshop, which staff did a pretty good job, I think, in terms of noticing the general public. Throughout the spring, staff met with Garden Grove Boulevard property and business owners. We were drawn into a few of those meetings. In May, we had the first Planning Commission study session where we got a lot of constructive feedback. There was a CEQA process associated with this and public notification. In August, we had our second Planning Commission meeting where we got additional feedback, much of which was incorporated into the document that is before you tonight, September 13th. So what really is the vision for these mixed-use districts? Well, I think the most important thing to mention is to provide additional flexibility and to promote vitality in these areas. What do we mean by flexibility? In the past, basically these were single-purpose zones. They would say commercial, you could build commercial, you couldn't do anything else. If somebody wanted to do something else, they would have to come in and go through a whole variance and general plan amendment process. This mixed-use ordinance in the mixed-use areas basically allows people to build a mix of housing and commercial uses, and in doing so gives the individual property owners more flexibility in terms of how they could develop their property regardless of what the market was. The mixed-use area is focused into very specific areas, which I'll show you in a minute, and it also provides for a variety of different types of buildings depending upon where you are. In some districts, it would only be 2, 3, and 4 stories. In a few areas, you would be allowed to go up higher. Another vision aspect of this was there really is a goal to introduce more vibrant types of developments in the future in Garden Grove and to put that in the books, if you will. Let me move on. Where are these mixed-use areas? In this particular map that you see, this is the general plan map. There are circles. These are generalized. These are the areas, the specific areas where the mixed-use land designations are. Most of them are along Garden Grove Boulevard. And then there are 3 what are called neighborhood mixed-use areas, mostly to the north of Garden Grove Boulevard. Here are the mixed-use land use designations. A little bit more specifically, what you can see here is they're different colors. The reason they're different colors is because they represent different types of mixed use. So, for instance, the orange is the neighborhood mixed use. For instance, over at Valley View or at Brookhurst, and I believe that's Chapman, those would be lower scale. At some of the major intersections along Garden Grove Boulevard, there'd be higher scale potentials. In going through the process, we did work with staff and note that there were several pieces of land that were either adjacent to, surrounded by, immediately adjoining some of the mixed-use areas that were noticed in the general plan, and it made sense to basically have there be more consistency of zoning in these areas so that these districts would have the best potential for emerging over time. And so as part of this whole action tonight, there are some adjustments, I guess, to the general plan, which would consolidate these mixed-use districts in a more direct way. So how does this actually work? In the general plan, on the column on the left, you see what the general plan said, which it called it out as things such as residential commercial mixed use or residential or civic center mixed use. And you'll notice that there's a range of scales from 0.5 FAR to 1.0 FAR, which I'll talk about in a couple of minutes when there are pictures, and a range of heights from basically 3 stories to 10 stories. And then we also have some designations that we had to follow in the general plan that had to do with number of dwelling units to the acre. And I would just say that when you're talking about 21 dwelling units to the acre, you're basically talking about attached townhouses. When you're talking 42 dwelling units to the acre, in typical stick-built construction, you're talking about 3 and 4 stories over parking. On the right-hand side is what came out of the process. We tried to regularize the nomenclature for the zoning code so that it was more understandable. We have GG areas for Garden Grove, we have CC for Civic Center, we have NM for neighborhood, and we have AR for the adaptive reuse area, which is just to the west of the Civic Center where we are today. Let me now go through these zones in a very quick and obviously cursory way, but I think it's important. In the Garden Grove area, we basically have 3 different types of Garden Grove designations. We have what's called the GGMU1, which is the most intense one, which gets us up to that 42 dwelling units to the acre, the 1.0 FAR, 7 to 10 stories maximum. That only occurs at a few of the major intersections. We then have, and this is an anomaly, but the next one down is the GGMU3, which you can see on the right, and along Garden Grove, there are certain mixed-use zones which are at the 0.5 FAR, 3 to 4 stories, and 21 dwelling units to the acre. Why do we have 3? We have different types of conditions along Garden Grove Boulevard. I've talked about the major intersections, but there are other locations where Garden Grove properties immediately adjoin very, very well-established single-family neighborhoods, and it doesn't necessarily make sense, since they're not on major intersections or something like that, to allow the most intense uses. So to a large extent, this is a contextual exercise, and there's adjustment based upon the conditions on the ground. Along Garden Grove, the vision is to really accommodate this mix of commercial and residential uses that are responsive to the local and regional demands. One thing that's very important is we really worked hard so that this wasn't just about what the uses that would be allowed were, the mix of uses, but we wanted to make sure that any new development that went in put in really good improvements so that it would enhance the appearance and the identity of Garden Grove Boulevard. We wanted to emphasize sidewalk-friendly architecture so that we would activate the street and pedestrian experience in these mixed-use areas. What are the opportunities? Well, the picture on the left basically shows an 8-story building over 1 and 2 stories of retail. That would kind of represent the highest intensity that might occur at, for instance, like the Brookhurst Triangle project. On the right, you basically have this notion of, can we make a boulevard over time where every project will contribute to the making of a street that has a fantastic Garden Grove identity. This particular illustration was done for the zoning code. The zoning code is illustrated more so than your zoning code would be or has been in the past. And what this basically represents is the sort of scale and the complexity of the types of development that might occur. And I'd just point out to you that all these little numbers on this diagram stand for different things that are in the zoning code that in essence are now, upon adoption, would become requirements. So for instance, there are provisions for enhanced setbacks. There are provisions for both what we called columnar trees to create identity, as well as canopy trees to create shade so that when people are walking, you know, they're not walking in a harsh environment. There are requirements for active storefronts. There are some modulation, or I think the best way of describing that, some design guidelines in order to encourage more interesting architecture with varied heights. Another thing that I'd point out in this is that to the right of the diagram you'll see some sort of gray, simple masses. That's the maximum zoning envelope that would be allowed, but it's very unlikely, in fact it's impossible that anyone would ever be able to achieve the maximum zoning envelope, because in every case the FARs that are allowed are much lower than that. In the Civic Center, we basically continued to follow this contextual logic to try to have different types of zones depending upon different types of uses that are already there or that the goal would be to enhance. So we have 4 different types in the Civic Center, from an open space zone, which acknowledges the fact that there is significant open space in the Civic Center, to the opposite end, which would be basically some specialized design guidelines to help reinforce the character of Main Street. And then on the opposite side, from, if Main Street is to the west, this neighborhood to the east, to try to allow for both mixed-use development where some of those smaller neighborhoods are, as well as to allow, if people want to continue living in those single-family houses, to continue living in them. So again, a sort of, in essence, a type of weaving, if you will. The vision for the Civic Center is basically to create zoning that helps further the cause of creating a town center for all of Garden Grove to use and enjoy, to conserve Main Street and the historic nature of that, to, depending upon which zone you're in, there could be anywhere from 3 to 7 stories, which I'll show you in a moment, and to create some design standards that really start to promote more pedestrian linkages throughout the street, not only on the sidewalks, but also moving through some of the blocks. What does that supposedly look like? Well, along Main Street, the goal would be to really, if anybody ever did end up building a new building there, to create a traditional street front building and have a couple of stories, perhaps, of residential over it that would be stepped back from the traditional one-story scale. In terms of some of the areas that are around the open space, the goal, yes, would be potentially to have some slightly more intense mixed-use buildings, but to ensure that they relate well and enhance the open spaces that are already in the Civic Center area. Again, we have design guidelines to help promote these ideas. We have visual guidelines to try to describe where the setbacks and different types of setbacks that should occur. We have step backs to ensure that we have a human scale along the sidewalks, and that if there is height, it's pushed towards the middle of the blocks. We have some standards and guidelines to help create some backbone in terms of creating higher quality storefronts as well. The neighborhood mixed-use zones, those I pointed those out in some of the areas before. All of those zones, for instance, like Valley View, those have the lowest densities and intensities of proposed use should this be adopted. And those are that townhouse scale that I talked about at 21 dwelling units to the acre and 0.5 FAR. And I forgot to obviously write this on here. It disappeared in the PowerPoint, but 3 to 4 stories in height. The goal for the neighborhood mixed-use areas, where basically we have traditional suburban shopping centers right now, is to allow for flexible reuse of these properties as they evolve, to allow them to evolve towards some type of what might be called a village center with 3 to 4 stories, to allow an intermixing of buildings and open space to realize more coherent community gathering places, and to encourage within these areas more walking and biking, both within them and to and from the surrounding neighborhoods. We would imagine that there would be, based upon the type of zoning, projects that might be what are called horizontal mixed-use projects, where perhaps a owner of the property develops it in such a way that there would be some commercial, and then adjoining that would be some townhouse-scale type development. And we could also imagine that there might be, in certain cases, vertical mixed-use, where the housing would be over the commercial. One of the things that's important to remember about the neighborhood mixed-use zone and a couple of the Garden Grove zones is that we're not really going to allow standalone residential developments in these areas, because we got some comments back and we thought it was very important that where there's existing commercial, that flexibility be allowed, but not to the point of having a disappearing neighborhood center, so people would no longer be able to shop in their own neighborhood, and not to the point where you would lose that commercial tax base as well. In the neighborhood mixed-use we have development standards, some of which apply throughout. This is what we call an encroachment plane, to ensure that where mixed-use properties adjoin residential properties, that there are not only setbacks in terms of how far away they need to be from the residential property, in this case 10 feet, but also that diagonal, which assures that the buildings step away from the residential properties. The adaptive reuse zone is to the west of here at basically Nutwood, and to the north of Garden Grove Boulevard. This is an existing industrial district. Going through this district, we began to feel this could be a very exciting area, and so we wrote the zoning to not only encourage the continued use of those industrial areas, but to allow for more creative uses in that as well, and to also, in this particular case, allow for what we call work-live units. So you could, with a new development, build work-live units, but that would be the only type of new residential that could be built within this area. The vision is to maintain the industrial feel and support, but to support more innovative light industrial, creative arts, and business incubator uses, to encourage adaptive reuse of the existing structures, in terms of the mixed use, to emphasize the work-live option, and still to maintain, in terms of the guidelines, pedestrian orientation, ultimately so that it could be tied back to the Civic Center along some of the streets that are there. What does that look like? Well, in the left-hand case, you see an example of a building that's been renovated, an industrial building, to have various types of creative uses. On the right is actually a mixed-use infill, vertical mixed-use project that features certain types of creative office uses on the lower floors and residential above. In all of the mixed-use zones, there are additional standards having to do with landscape, walls, fences, and hedges, parking and loading standards, signage standards, collection of recyclable materials. One of the things that we did was we basically worked with the existing zoning code, so the types of restrictions and constraints that have traditionally shaped projects in Garden Grove have also been, in essence, overlaid on top of and coordinated with the new mixed-use zone. And, of course, every single zone has land use standards, the full panoply of land use standards that basically say, you know, these types of uses are allowed, these types of uses are not allowed. And that is basically my presentation, and would look forward to any questions and listening and learning from the discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. With that, it's recommended that the City Council approve 2 resolutions and introduce the first readings of the ordinances after you open up for public hearing.
Any questions of staff before we open up the public hearing?
I have some questions. Related to the neighborhood mixed use, you said you got some comments from whoever, business advocates, proponents?
Oh.
Residents? Who?
Well, there have been comments received all along. Do you want to start, or I could fill in, or?
No, go ahead, you start.
Okay, well, we got comments right from the get-go when we did the stakeholder interviews. We met with the property owners, I believe, at 2 of the 3 neighborhood mixed-use areas. They described some very real challenges, and what they were really the ones who emphasized more than anybody else that they were interested in flexibility, meaning that looking forward, there's not a lot of incentive for them to redevelop their properties. Most of them are doing moderately well, and there's not a lot of density capacity that they could build like an internal shopping mall or something. But they couldn't traditionally put any residential in there. So that type of flexibility to be able to use, to be able to look both towards the residential markets as well as the commercial markets over time, they thought that was a valuable thing. But I think that was the major comment we heard from them. Some of them expressed a little bit of frustration with where the market's going and things like that, but that's cyclical.
Okay, but that was mostly businesses that were...
We also heard from some of the surrounding property owners during the stakeholder meetings and some of the associations, and we heard a full range of comments from people that were very concerned that they didn't want to see overdevelopment, they didn't want to have buildings shadow their residential neighborhoods. Along Garden Grove Boulevard, we heard from certain people who wanted more intensity of uses and more capability to run restaurants late into the night and things like that. So we heard a fairly rich mixture of different types of ideas that we tried to balance in this document.
Related to the mixed neighborhood use, I was also wondering, it's mandatory that they build commercial components. Include residential or vice versa?
No, it's not mandatory that they build a residential component. It's mandatory that they build in the neighborhood mixed use a commercial component. So, for instance, if the way the draft ordinance is written right now, if somebody wanted to do a residential development, 20% of the total area would need to be devoted to commercial use. And as I mentioned during the presentation, perhaps too quickly, there were several intents in doing that. One was we didn't want to, after discussion, see a developer come forward, purchase one of the shopping centers perhaps, and redevelop the entire shopping center as a residential development with no commercial. Because if you look at where they are in the map, those really are the commercial centers for the surrounding neighborhoods. And the second thing was there was concern expressed at various times that I think the city staff felt that it would not be proper to see all of the commercial tax base in that type of a case disappear. And so there was a desire basically to ensure that if the residential market, such as it was, say in the early aughts or the mid-aughts, was so strong that you wouldn't end up, in essence, taking one type of single-purpose zoning, which was commercial, and inadvertently, through a mixed-use ordinance, replace it with another type of single-purpose zoning that would actually increase the burden on the city in terms of things like schools, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay. And just to clarify, too, the number of stories for the mixed use is 3 to 4?
Well, let's see. In that particular area, yes. In the neighborhood mixed use. In Garden Grove Boulevard, you could get up, for instance, at the intersection with Brookhurst, I believe, to 10 stories theoretically.
What we should add with the neighborhood mixed use, the current zoning would allow up to 3 stories under the C2 and C1 zoning. The general plan currently would allow the 3 to 4 stories. So we're consistent with what the general plan says.
And maybe putting up this chart would make sense, going back to this.
Yeah, that might be good.
This is really the story. I mean, basically on the left are the general plan land use designations which were adopted in 2008, and the way the implementing zoning work that we've done is completely consistent with that. We've not added any additional intensity to what was in the general plan. We've not added any additional height to what was in the general plan. And we've not added any additional residential density. We've decided, we did in fact explore with staff the possibility of doing it in ways that would have created additional density, but we moved away from that.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, I'd like to open the public hearing. I've got a number of cards. Robin Marcario.
Hello. I'm Robin Marcario again. I just wanted to make a couple of comments. I was grateful to be included in the the consultant and so forth, and able to give some feedback at that point. And the way that it's been laid out, the change from the general plan amendment to create this mixed use has some beneficial changes. The design standards, the pedestrian-friendly, the requirements for energy-efficient building practices, the urban trails were certainly appealing, landscaping improvements, and revitalizing some of the older shopping centers. Let's see. Let me just go specifically to a couple of the areas. The GGMU, those 3 sections made sense because they're along Garden Grove Boulevard, and I think those make sense for higher densities along there. The Civic Center area, the 2 districts, and it's nice that we do have open space in the Civic Center area, so that will certainly create the Civic Center area with, it could handle higher density. The neighborhood mixed use, there's a couple of sections that I have some concerns with. Let's see, the Chapman section, the northbound side near the movie theaters, those back up to the area that we call the bird cages, because all of those streets are named after birds. So any kind of density that you do above that will certainly impact the existing neighborhood. The same goes for the Brookhurst and Catella section. That also backs up to that very same neighborhood. So I think that the Catella Brookhurst section could easily put the higher densities closer to Catella rather than closer to closer to the main boulevard rather than right up next to the main established neighbors is what I would like to see, rather than putting towers on the existing and directly impacting your existing neighborhood. It would be nice to see those closer to the main boulevards. The adaptive reuse makes a lot of sense, and it's always kind of an artist's village, which ties in with the Civic Center, makes sense. The couple of concerns, I would have liked, as I quoted earlier in oral comments, I liked the fact that there was a public notification for the water improvements. There was not a public notification for these kinds of things. There was not given, a public notification to these neighborhoods that are within 300 feet of these kinds of things, especially the stuff along that I just mentioned for the birdcage area and also on the west end. So all of those homes could be directly impacted. The ones that are along Valley View and Lamson, because Valley View runs east and west, if you put higher densities there, all of your existing homes will be in the shade. They will be in shadow. Anything that you put up. So any of those on the west end that you deal with in that section between Lamson and Cerulean, all of those would be put in shadow. The ones that are at Chapman and Valley View, those are they don't have as much impact to existing residents. So I wouldn't advise anything to do with Valley View, Lamson, Cerulean. I would just leave it as it is, because adding stories to that would just be detrimental to the existing properties. It would have been advantageous, one, to do that public notification and have little neighborhood meetings to those that are directly affected. I would like to see the open space being a requirement, not a they can do it or should or something, but that they must actually put some open space. Otherwise, you're just creating higher densities with no open space. Let's see. The preservation of the existing neighborhoods, the standard of living includes excessive shading, which I just mentioned. The shading will degrade the existing visual character and quality for the existing residences. I think that when we're looking at these kinds of things, and you should be looking at cumulative effects. You're potentially looking at thousands of new residents. So you really need to start putting in parks and open space. You just can't look the other way or look at individual projects. You need to make that a requirement of open space and public art and the things that do create community here in Garden Grove. We can't just say density is the way to go. So you need to just kind of think of how the residents are going to actually benefit from this. I can see how the development community can benefit, and we'll see eventually the market will turn around and they'll do great. I would just like to see how it benefits us, the residents and existing businesses. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Tony Flores.
Good evening, I'm Tony Flores. I'm not going to be as subtle. I'm not in favor of this at all, and I'll tell you why. First off, I believe the three of you need to recuse yourselves, and you should be disqualified from voting, and I'll tell you why. Actually, Mr. Jones, you made my point a while ago. Twice tonight you stepped off the dais because of your conflicts. You're basically a developer, not necessarily a representative of the city. Not the folks that I live around do you represent us. But having said that, since you will, well, let me just read off the municipal code. You could potentially earn a few dollars, but I'm going to read off of Chapter 2, Code of Ethics for Public Officers, Section 2.02.060, specifically D, conflict of interest. A conflict of interest exists in a matter before an official for consideration or determination if, and 1, the public official has a substantial financial or substantial personal interest in the outcome as an owner, member, partner, officer, employee, or stockholder of any corporation where his interest exceeds 3% of the share of the corporation and or other professional enterprise that will be affected by the outcome. And such interest is or may be adverse to the public interest in the proper performance of governmental duties by the official. And then 2, has reason to believe or expect that he will derive a direct monetary gain or suffer a direct monetary loss, as may be the case by reason of his official activity. So you've already demonstrated that tonight. So by you voting for this, later on you could potentially benefit. Okay, that's why I'm saying you should be disqualified or recuse yourself now. Ms. Nguyen, your husband's on the Planning Commission. He's already rubber stamped this deal. So just by that. Here's number 3, the public official, because of his bias, prejudice, or because he has prejudged the matter set for the public hearing, is incapable because of such bias, prejudice, or prejudgment of granting to the matter before him a fair and impartial hearing. So my point's going to be made tonight because you'll probably all know what I'm saying here, going to rubber stamp and it's going to go forward. So you've already made your decision based on what your husband has decided. Mr. Beard, you've been on the Planning Commission for a while, and if we look at your vote on the Planning Commission on October 15, 2009, you actually voted to change the land use. So let me just get this right here. Yeah, to amend Title IX, the zoning ordinance. So you've already voted for this. You too have a prejudgment on this, and you should be disqualified or recuse yourself as well. Not to mention that you appear to live in or near the affected area, at least according to the documents that we've seen tonight. So I believe you guys need to, all 3 of you shouldn't be able to vote on this at all. And my understanding is when you can't vote on this, when the council can't vote on it, the way I understand the government code, then it needs to go to the vote of the people. Third, I'm looking at the Planning Commission meeting minutes of Thursday, August 4, 2011. 12111 Valley View is not on this. This is what all the addresses that our Planning Commission voted on, but when I look at the documents that are set before our council tonight, all of a sudden 12111 Valley View is on here. And that's, by the way, that's the 4-star cinema on Valley View between Belgrave and Chapman. So it's not on the minutes as voted on by the Planning Commission, but now it's in front of the council here. I don't think this address can qualify for a vote. But like I said, I don't believe you folks can vote on this tonight. It doesn't leave us with anybody to vote on it. Also, too, the impact. And we talked about the EIR reports, the environmental impact reports. When we go to put these in, or we were to implement this, what happens to the existing CUPs, the conditional use permits, of all the businesses that are there? Are they going to get changed? Are they going to get moved out? You know, we're going to have some strange-looking areas, but I don't want to see this in West Garden Grove where it's going to impact our traffic, our water, our sewer, our rates. All these things are going to come back on us. And if development's working so great, why do we keep raising our water and sewer charges and our fees and assessments? That keeps going up. Maybe no taxes, but my checkbook, like I said before, doesn't know the difference between a tax, an assessment, a charge, or a fee. We're still paying. But like I said before earlier, I don't believe you three are or can vote on this by way of the municipal code that exists regarding the conflict of interest. Good evening.
Thank you. Verla Lambert.
Of course, needless to say, I don't think blanketing rezoning change is a good idea for the residents of Garden Grove. This would take away the process of each resident and their properties when they are involved in one of the city projects. The reason for this rezoning is to make it easier for city manager and staff's job easier, and to market properties to developers easier. Once again, this shows that city manager and staff put themselves and the developers before the residents of the city, whom they are supposed to be working for. And by taking one of their property rights to due process, if the city manager and staff, if they don't want to work for the residents, then we need to get one that does. Thank you.
Thank you. David Latherborn.
Good evening again, Council, Mayor Pro Tem, Steve, staff. Going back to December 19th, that's a Thursday, 1996, Garden Grove Journal reporter, East Street approved by agency. East Street, if you're not familiar with, was the original plan to develop the land that the three hotels on Harbor Boulevard, Harbor and Chapman on the sit on, along with the 4 restaurants that are there. The original plan was an entertainment center. That's what they were going to put a theater in there, and that was going to fix everything and bring revenue in for Garden Grove. Well, the people that were going to invest in that decided to pull out after the city council acting as an agency to the community development, voted to execute the purchase agreements for the acquisition of the mobile homes in the Oasis Park. This is the park that senior citizens 55 and over lived in. They had a 100-year lease to live there, and the city went in there with the threat of eminent domain and took that property away. Now, they sit on the reason why I am pointing this out is by example for the development of Main Street and on Brookhurst and everything else. They raised that property over there on that corner by 6 feet from the original ground level. How I know that? They had to put a 12.5-foot wall on my backyard. 12.5 feet. That's a lot of wall. But you know something? That wall is only 6 foot above ground level on the other side. So when the big buses come by, spewing their exhaust, the cars, the noise, all of these things in that parking lot that must hold 1,000 cars. How many cars do they really hold? Do you know? We had a lot of cars, and they overfill. And that was the other thing. Here we're going to go down Main Street. Right now we haven't got parking for the limited businesses that are there. And now this pictures you showed of the Oakland shopping centers and all of those places, we don't have that much room on Main Street. There would be no room for a car to go down. Maybe we need to close that Main Street down for traffic. Is that what we plan to do? But then we need places to park the cars. Well, we can't park it over in the college area because they already threw us out of there. So where are we going to put the cars in to establish businesses so that the people can get there? Well, that's why Garden Grove is hurting for business. We have the corner of Chapman and Brookhurst. Very large businesses were there. They're not there now. People packed up and moved out. It was too much cost. They didn't have enough people shopping there. People are going to Costco and Sam's Club and places like that to save money. But now we're going to build another bunch of businesses. What kind of businesses are there going to be? Don't know. Nobody does. It just depends on how are they going to do it. So now, Wednesday, July 16th, 1997, Journal reported a handful of Oasis mobile home park tenants were still awaiting relocation, but the $40 million entertainment complex may be a bust. And that's what it was. It was a bust. They never got that in there. And that's when Mr. Bruce Rodwater at that time was mayor, and they decided, let's put some hotels in there. It was a good idea. But adequate parking wasn't there. They had an engineering survey, and they said, oh, yeah, we have adequate. Even Matt Fertel over here, he knows that was the report that we got back in there. But today, 2011, they're parking on my street because there's not enough parking in the hotels. And I am a quarter of a mile away from the hotels. And they're over there filling my streets every weekend and whenever there's any kind of meeting. What's going to happen to these other businesses that are around? Okay, my time is up, but I hope I made myself clear. I was trying to. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Scott Harrison.
Good evening, Council. My name is Scott Harrison. I'm a plumbing contractor. I'd just like to ask a few questions like follow the money. This is not about the people. These developments, I've seen them go up. I'm working at them. If you ever drive a service truck and try to work on a project like this, there is no place to park a service truck. The cost to repair something in a building like this is 3 times the amount of a single-family home. Do you guys realize that? Because by the time I get out of my truck and get up to that 3rd floor in an elevator, oh, I forgot a screwdriver. Go all the way back down. I can't drive the truck up to the front door like I can a regular house. The people don't even understand that when they're buying these places. The only people making money is the developers. And what do they do with their money to get this to happen? It goes into campaign coffers. It's a circular motion getting people reelected. Okay? This is what it is. Follow the money. Okay? When these things are developed and they say 20% is going to be for commercial use, it's an absolute joke. The only way you get money through the bottom line of this city is through tax dollars. Okay? You can't get tax dollars from when you're taking these large businesses and reducing them to these small little businesses. There's no money coming back to the general fund. Yeah, you're controlling it with redevelopment and all that kind of stuff, but it's not coming to the general fund. You're putting a big burden on sewer, water, trash, fire, police departments, and that's not being factored into the price of this to the regular people that live in these communities. We're going to have to pay the brunt of it, and you just keep taxing and taxing and taxing. You're not going to enrich our lives or make our dollars go further or make our houses worth more money by voting for this kind of a plan. It's a sham. Thank you.
Thank you. Peggy Bergen.
30-year resident and still counting. Anyways, I want to thank our lovely presenter of that. I'm hoping he was part of the Ireland part because he certainly had the romantic gift of gab. Now, that presentation was practically impossible to see with all of those glorified rosy little pictures behind the dim gray writing. I love to take notes. I couldn't even read it. So basically the presentation was just another group of smoke and mirrors like we love to do here. All we ever hear is, it's going to work, it's great. Well, now my first question when I first started hearing about this, and I do think I was called into the office and I spoke to one of your representatives one afternoon. There was supposed to be 2 or 3 of us, but I was the only one that showed up, so I got to vent on that poor person. Anyways, but the whole issue is our forefathers started this city, 54 years ago now. Now you are telling us once again, this city was started by a bunch of boobs, rubes, and jerks that didn't know anything because they set out streets, they put businesses on certain streets, they put single-family residences on large lots. They gave us schools, they gave us very minimal parks, I will admit that. But anyways, the rest of it seemed to be working pretty well. Then you guys started coming in with your variances here, your CUPs, COPs, whatever they're called, someplace else. Every place there's a lack of parking. It's astronomical. Every place. Now, you keep talking romantically about these mixed use. You have these little, very small residential units with tiny rooms in them, basically speaking, over this mixed use where you don't ever have to leave your house on the weekend. Well, you know, I'm going to tell you something. Everyone I've driven by, they have a Subway sandwich and a Starbucks. There are only so many Subway poor boys I can eat in a lifetime. And at $5 a cup of coffee with innumerable calories, I cannot afford, my waistline cannot afford it, and my pocketbook cannot afford Starbucks. There's no place to barbecue in most of these places. The pool, one pool, this is great. There's 200 units here, and you have a pool probably the size of a backyard pool. All you need is one family to have a group gathering, and bango, your weekend is shot. The thing is, we cannot make it easier for outsiders to come and take over our city. We've already made it way, way, way too easy. They come, and I hear out of Susan all the time. I love her. She's a lovely girl. But we always hear, well, this group has been working with us for 5 years, and they have reduced this project from 40,000 units to 120. So I think it's going to be a perfect fit. Where does Susan Emery live? Does she live off Harbor Boulevard? Does she live off Valley View? Does she have to drive Harbor Boulevard to go home? Does she have to make that turn on Fairview to Garden Grove Boulevard at night? No, she doesn't. She's living somewhere where it is not as crowded. She's in a newer area where they came in with the wide streets, they did this, they did that, and you can't tell me they're going to put a 7-story building in her backyard and she'll be happy as a lark. Basically, my topic here was, and also, I did look up Hogan, Ireland, and this I loved. Their primary mission statement. Now this I got off their own website. I didn't make this up. This is word for word. Help you reach your goals. We familiarize ourselves with your objectives, not the citizens, their objectives. Philosophy and goals, which means smaller units, more units, less traffic. Put our expertise to work to enable you to reach those goals in the easiest, quickest, and most economically advantageous manner. But it's working to your goals. They do not come out and say, we're going to analyze this and see what's possible. They tell them how they want it to set up. Now here I have the EIR report, or whatever it is. I'm terrible with those acronyms. This one has to do with waste, utilities and services, wastewater, new construction on storm drains, determination of wastewater. Do we comply with all of our federal and local statutes? Guess what?
Not one is potentially significant. I have never, on one of these reports, ever seen a potentially significant. This one is always less than significant or no impact. How if you take a bunch of yards that have grass where it rains, and it goes into the ground. Now you put loads of cement and nothing. None of these require permeable water to go down into the ground. It all rushes into our drain systems. How can that not be a difference? It's got to be significant. Somewhere you've got to stop, and you cannot keep making it easier for other people to come to our city and take it over. They are. I moved here because of large lots, parks, and that. Now, there's no lots, and I hear they're closing up Twin Lakes Park in a few months to drain it, fill it, put huge big pumps in. That's the park I walk in. Where am I going to walk now for the next 18 months while they do that? And when they come back, they're going to put soccer fields on, which means they're going to take some of the grass out, most of the grass out, put 2 soccer fields, and increase the parking. That's not a park. A park is where you can go spread out a blanket, have a picnic lunch, and enjoy yourself. Look alive, guys. Your children are soon going to get older. You're going to get older. You're not going to always be happy to live in a 3-story condominium unit where every time you go from the car to put your coat away in your bedroom, you have to walk up 42 steps. That's not very friendly. Thank you very, very much.
That's all the cards I have. Is there anybody else who would still like to speak? Okay, seeing none, I will go ahead and close the public hearing. I'd like to defer back to staff or the consultants if they'd like to sort of add any closing statements, and especially in light of all the comments that we received.
Well, I'll just say one thing that I think is key. Some of the people that spoke tonight, I did have the opportunity to meet, and I appreciate their concerns. I think the main thing to be said is we're not proposing any changes to any single-family neighborhoods. We're actually proposing some guidelines that will actually increase the separation and buffering, if you will, between adjoining commercial or mixed-use projects and residential projects. And then finally, I would say that, our role as consultants was to work with a general plan that was adopted by the city that basically thought it made sense to have mixed-use areas in existing commercially zoned areas. And I think it's very important to remember that what we're talking about here is creating additional tools to create better projects in the future on properties that were basically commercially zoned in the past. And I think that's what we've tried to do, and hopefully we've done it.
Thank you.
And the other thing I would just add is that by creating these standards, it's keeping the zoning consistent with the general plan that was approved in 2008. And we tried to make sure that we followed everything that came out of all the general plan public hearing meetings and what was approved at that time.
Is that it? Okay. Dina, I believe you had a question.
I have a question. Yeah, after the comments made, I have one particular concern is Robin McCary mentioned the Lamson and Valley View and Chapman and Valley View. In that area, are there some spot zoning already existing?
The zoning out there right now is not consistent with the general plan. And so most of it I think is C2 out there. And the general plan out there is mixed use. So we're creating that consistency. There was one piece of property that was just south of the bowling alley that was not included in that. And so because it's actually part of that shopping center, what we did was we added that in there.
How big is that property?
Oh, I don't even think it's an acre. Is it, Carl?
Less than an acre?
It's less than an
And so to clarify that it's already a mixed-use zone.
Not that particular piece of property.
No,
It's a commercial.
the area we're talking about is already a mixed-use zone, except for that parcel?
No, the zoning isn't the general plan land use
Oh,
designation.
I see. Our general plan already accounted for that
Yes.
as a mixed use?
Yes.
Okay, so now we're just adding one parcel to that
Right,
plan.
and creating the zoning to implement the general
Okay.
plan.
And then what about other residential along those streets?
We haven't, all the residential zones that are adjacent to these commercial zones are staying residential. They're keeping their zoning, if that's your question.
So it's already commercial. The property included in there,
Is already a commercial piece of property.
right, and the residential that will be included in the mixed use can have the option of being built up?
Within the mixed-use zones, you can add residential to those, but you can't go straight residential. They have to maintain some commercial.
Okay, but in that mixed-use zone, are there residential right now?
No.
No.
Oh, okay.
No, there's
That's
not. Okay.
clarified.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Before we vote, are we going to get the main comments?
Sure.
That-
Yeah,
Okay.
go ahead if you have any questions.
Yeah, question, conflict of interest. Let's address that issue. I'm not within 500 feet of any of these properties here.
No, you're not.
And I never voted on any matter prejudging this, what we're considering tonight.
Yeah, I did not hear anything articulated that indicated that there is a legal conflict of interest associated with any of the council members that are presently participating in this discussion.
Can I?
Sure,
Okay.
go right ahead.
First off, I'm supportive of the mixed use because in those areas right now, there's a lot of spot zoning, and if you don't synchronize those or coordinate those, then we'll have a lot of different uses that the city can't administer and would be not effective to the general plan. And thank you for clarifying that last question. As far as potential conflict, I'm not within 500 feet of any of the proposal, and my husband and I do not have a financial interest in any of the proposals. And if I think I would, Mr. Flores wouldn't appreciate me saying that he's here tonight because his wife decided he would be here tonight. And that would be suggesting that he doesn't have the liberty to think independently or the freedom to act as he sees righteous because he's in a marriage. And that's all I have to say about that. And also, with regard to the mixed use, again, I am supportive of that, and I just wanted to make sure that when we look at this again, that the residential area that are adjacent to the mixed use are not going to be affected negatively because of the high rises. And I do see that you put different stories as to the different areas according to the residential units. Is that correct? Okay, and I'm okay with that, and because of that, I'll be supportive of this change to the general plan.
Thank you. Chris?
Okay, just some comments and responses, and I appreciate the testimony and the input. In addition to this testimony tonight, I also received word from other citizens. It's interesting. A speaker previously said, I'm from the west end of Garden Grove, and he made reference to how close I am to the Valley View, Lamson, Chapman area, which I am, which means I frequent that area quite a bit. That's my neighborhood. And the benefit of being on that side is you go there every day and you see the impact. Overall, with this plan, what's being proposed today, I'm pretty much supportive of most of it. I'd have to say probably 90%. But as it relates to the neighborhood mixed use, I think on that particular side, I am familiar with it. I've gotten a lot of feedback, and I think basically, if it ain't broken, don't fix it. I think we should keep it the way it is. I think my suggestion would be to remove that section of the plan from the entire body of this, so that we consider keeping it purely residential and commercial in that use. I don't know if we can do that. I think we can, but I'd like to see that withdrawn. Basically, I agree with the other areas of the city, and so I'd like to keep the west portion out of the plan, and I would be supportive of the rest of the general plan designations as laid out. So,
Mr. Beard, are you talking about the area that Ms. Macara was talking about?
correct. So,
Do you have some kind of visual that depicts what is NMU?
I can describe it. It's the intersection of Chapman Avenue and Valley View.
I'll have a map.
Okay. I heard the word fit. This proposal, this rezoning, just doesn't fit in that neighborhood as I see it. And so I don't think, I agree with some of the speakers tonight, it adds to the traffic, the congestion, the density. We don't need additional residential over there. I mean, it works. It's our neighborhood, the neighborhood that neighbors, I understand the business aspects of the proponents for this. It can help improve their properties down the line. But, there's a lot of people living in there. And not to say I'm just one of them, but the surrounding area. In that part of town, I think we can just leave it as is. I think it's okay to do that. And so, again, going back to the rest of the parts of the city, I'm in total agreement with that. We can work out, and I think it's a benefit to those areas. But as it relates to that section, the west side, I would propose, and I'd like to ask that we take that out of the...
So you're talking about just get rid of that?
Is that the orange at the bottom on the left?
To the map.
Yeah.
Do you have anything to add about that, Mr. Jones?
Oh, me?
Yeah, regarding Mr. Beard's comment.
I'm still trying to absorb it myself. I'd actually like to hear any comments from staff about the concept of taking that out.
I think we could, and I don't think it would be problematic if we take a snapshot today. I think a lot of the concerns that you may have about what happens in a mixed-use opportunity. And so I think we can do it if you look at it as it is today. My only qualification is that in 1986, 87, we had the first Costco go in at Brookers and Chapman in Orange County. We had the first Vaughn's Pavilion go in at Brookers and Chapman, the first Vaughn's Pavilion in Orange County. It was considered the #1 retail intersection in all of Orange County in the mid-1980s. 5 years later, it was no longer considered the #1 retail intersection in Orange County. Costco moved, Vaughn's Pavilions closed. They ended up downgrading it to a Vaughn's, and Vaughn's eventually left. The old Costco building has remained vacant since 1994. So, although it may look very promising today, in this ever-changing economy and the ever-changing demographics, what you see there today may not be there in 5 years. This kind of a mixed-use zoning will give a lot more flexibility for the city to look at opportunities that we can do something productive for the area rather than what we have at Brookers and Chapman, which is an empty Costco building and an empty Vaughn's building. So I think I only use that as an example on how quickly things change in a very dynamic economy. So, yes, if you look at that area today, you think of some of the mixed-use examples that we show, you think, no, that's not the character of what we see today. But 5 years, things can be completely different, and we don't have the necessary tools and flexibility to react to take a vacant building. If some of you remember Valley View and Chapman, when you had a vacant Alpha Beta and a vacant Lucky Store. So it's just, you can't always just freeze in what you see there today. As a planning document, a general plan, which lasts 10 to 20 years, you want to look for the future to give you as much resources and flexibility to react. So my only reservation is, I don't disagree with what you perceive as the situation today, but things change quickly, and this is a valuable tool to respond and be creative and innovative when things do change.
Well, I appreciate that example that you gave. At the same token, I've lived there for close to 20 years, and I've seen the incremental changes that have happened, and I appreciate those that I've witnessed and seen firsthand. I understand about the flexibility and maybe devoting more resources, but we have the zoning now to allow certain elements that we want to continue, or it can change on its own. So I hear what you're saying. I just like to see it stay as it is. I think this could accelerate some change that we may not want as well. It's an incremental process as I see it for this particular area, not the other parts of the city. So I just like to keep to that and see it stay the way it is and preserve it as it is. So those are my comments. Yeah, you get.
Yeah, you're talking about just these. Right?
Yes, yes. Are you clear? Yeah, just what's
Everything valid color. Just these all valid. Okay, I'd like to chime in here, say a few things. There was boy, tough crowd, and there's a lot of comments with conviction from different perspectives about what this is all about. You know, at core, I want to commend staff and our consultants. Hogle Ireland was wonderful to work with. They did an exhaustive effort of really reaching out and sort of digging into the roots of this thing. At core, this is a technical planning exercise to bring our zoning in conformance with our general plan. You know, beyond that, it's an attempt to add some flexibility in various places around town, not affecting single-family residential neighborhoods, not affecting sensitive property ownership situations, but really targeting in on places that could use some updating, could use some transition in general. There was Peggy made a comment, kind of, you know, as if we're disrespecting the founding fathers of the city by making changes to zoning, or by allowing some of the development that we have over the years. All I can say is, you know, having lived in Garden Grove my whole entire life, and I've seen it go from agricultural fields to what it is today, it's been a dramatic change over the years. There's been a lot of changes. The population of Orange County has grown dramatically. The population of Garden Grove has grown dramatically. It's a very desirable place in the world to live in Southern California. The weather is beautiful here year-round. You know, we're next to the coast, and everything Orange County is wonderful, and obviously people have recognized that and flocked here in droves. The way business is done has changed. We've gone from mom-and-pop stores to the advent of bigger box stores, and there's been changes in that. That has left blight on our old strip centers, which have some degree of socioeconomic obsolescence in today's sort of environment. A lot of changes in the city. I think this serves to address some of those problems by just adding an overlay. It doesn't take anything away from the existing businesses, the existing CUPs, the existing uses. You can still go on doing an auto use in the auto district area here on the other side of Euclid. And nothing changes about that. This just adds an overlay zone. It adds some flexibility that you could continue doing what you're doing, or you could redevelop or rethink it. Obviously, in going through that process, you have to meet open space requirements. You have to meet parking requirements if you're going to add density one way or another. That has to be accomplished. So, I think this is a wonderful thing. I've spoken to staff, and I gather that there are no developers that are lining up to go through and do anything with this. These are a lot of little parcels, land that would need to be assembled. I would guess that what we would see is kind of one-off little projects here and there that would start to reshape these areas. Hopefully that would there'd be a little bit of contagiousness in that, and we'd see actual areas with a lot of these little redevelopments, just to see some updating of some of the the curb appeal and the street facades of these things to look more like the pictures they showed us as opposed to some of the blight that we have now throughout these areas. So I hope this is a positive thing, and I'm very strongly supportive of this. So unless there's any other comments, I guess I'd like to make that a motion.
Like I said, I was supportive of this comment. I had a concern regarding Ms. Macaria comment, and then later on, Councilmember Beard have a concern regarding the section on the west side. Is it possible for me to make a motion, a substitute motion, to approve the zoning land use designations with the exception of the west side? I want to save that for later. It's not a no on that. I want some time to look more into it. Can we do that?
Well, you can certainly make a motion to remove the properties along Valley View from the proposed mixed-use zone.
But can we revisit that later?
I don't know in what context we'll bring it back, but I don't think that prohibits us from bringing that back either. It might involve a similar process, so I don't want to misstate that we can just put it back on the agenda.
I'm comfortable with my decision at the beginning. I just want to give whoever have the concern another opportunity to take a look at the area again. But if that's going to create one more process like this, then I think it's more costly than to just go ahead with my decision right now. Is that what you're saying? That if we do that, we're going to have to go through this whole process again?
I think if we added it back, we would bring it back as a normal zone change. You know, we probably, I mean, there may be some neighborhood meetings specific to that area.
Did we have that this time?
Not specific to that area. The Garden Grove Boulevard area had specific meetings. We had a general meeting, and we had a specific one in Garden Grove Boulevard. We did not, I don't believe, have one in the west side. So your question and your proposal is doable, if that's how you want to make your motion. To remove the properties along Valley View at this time and reserve the opportunity to bring them back at a later date.
Time. One more question. Aside from the example that you gave us tonight, is there any other reason that we wanted to include this into the mixed zone?
Well, it is a key commercial area, and as you go into the future, I think you will see dynamics change as it relates to commercial development, residential development.
Has the commercial community expressed an interest in this? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. All right, if I can make that motion, my substitute motion is that we reserve the west side of Garden Grove for a later date to make a decision on that, and that we move forward with the proposed plan for the mixed-use zones.
Okay.
Second.
If I make a proposal, let's make that as a preliminary motion, so we're basically removing that section from your consideration of the project that's before you tonight, removing the Valley View section, correct?
Yes.
And then my suggestion is if that motion passes, then that the council proceed to first address after that the two resolutions that are there for consideration, and then following the reading of the title of the ordinance, address a motion for the ordinance itself.
So we have a motion.
Second.
Call for the vote.
Then we need to consider resolution of the City Council, that'd be 8B1. So
Need a vote on this one.
We need several, do we need three separate motions?
This one first, to remove, and then go.
Oh, just to remove it, I'm sorry. Okay, so go ahead and vote on removing the Valley View area.
Okay, this is just to remove the Valley View area.
Yeah.
Okay.
Motion received, 3 yes votes.
Okay, can they adopt both resolutions at one time? So now we need a motion to adopt resolutions regarding 8B1 and 8B2.
I'll move them.
Second.
Motion received, 3 yes votes.
Okay, and I'm going to read ordinance for 8B3. That's an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Garden Grove approving amendment number A160-11 and amendment number A-161-11 to implement the Garden Grove General Plan by amending Title IX of the Garden Grove Municipal Code to establish new mixed-use zones and corresponding new mixed-use regulations and development standards, and to make the corresponding changes to the zoning map and existing definitions and sign standards. We'll need a motion to approve that.
I thought we did. I'll move it again.
Second.
Motion received, 3 yes votes.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Yeah, we'll take a quick break.
An appeal of a denial of a tentative parcel map and a variance, and Chris Chung is here to give a staff report on this item.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. The subject property is currently an approximate 13,550 square foot lot located on the northeast corner of Dale Street and Acacia Avenue at 8503 Acacia Avenue. The site is currently improved with 2 detached existing residential dwelling units, although the current lot size is approximately 13,550 square feet. For property development considerations, the property would be subject to a 10-foot right-of-way dedication along the westerly property line, as well as a corner cutoff dedication. This would reduce the lot size to net developable area of 12,438 square feet. Under the R3 zone, City Code allows a maximum of 3 units based on this lot size. The applicant is requested to subdivide the existing lot into 2 separate parcels. Lot 1 is proposed at 4,938 square feet in area, and Lot 2 is proposed at 7,500 square feet in area. The minimum lot size is 7,200 square feet for a parcel in R3 zone. Thus, Lot 1 would not meet the minimum lot size requirement, as it would be 2,262 square feet short. A variance to deviate from this minimum lot size area is required to approve the proposed subdivision. On July 7, 2011, the Planning Commission considered tentative parcel map number PM-2011-000 and variance number V-191-11. Staff recommended denial of the application based on a proposed project not being in compliance with several City Code development standards. Staff also noted that the proposed new garage and existing driveway encroach into the required rear yard area. City Code requires a minimum of 1,000 square feet of usable open space in the rear yard area. The proposed location of the new garage, along with the new driveway, leaves a total approximately 883 square feet of open space available in the required rear yard area. Although the applicant does have the option to change the design to comply with this R1 zone rear yard open space requirement, as currently proposed, approval of this proposed parcel map would require an additional variance item to deviate from the minimum open space requirement in the required rear yard area. Staff indicated to the Planning Commission that the necessary findings to support the justification of the requested variance could not be made. Upon review of the matter, the Planning Commission concurred with staff in not being able to make the necessary findings, and therefore voted to adopt Resolution Number 5741-11 to deny PM-2011-000 and V-191-11. Mr. Dinlai Vu, the property owner, has appealed the denial of the tentative parcel map and the variance to City Council to consider the project. In his appeal, the appellant stated reasons of the denial being unfair. Mr. Lee is requesting that the City Council review the appeal and approve PM-2011-000 and variance 191-11 to approve the subdivision and the variance. Again, noting that in order to grant the requested variance, specific findings are required, and as is set forth in the Planning Commission staff report, all findings cannot be made for this application. Therefore, it is recommended that the City Council adopt the attached resolution upholding the Planning Commission's decision denying tentative parcel map number PM-2011-000 and variance number V-191-11 in full and thereby deny the appeal. And that concludes staff's report, and we're here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Any questions for staff? Okay. Hearing none, I'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone here that would like to speak on this matter? Okay?
Please. Could you please, submit to them our presentation? Our staff, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Chairman, council members. Today, this is the appeal, my appeal, against the Planning Commission Resolution number 574111 in the hearing session held on July the 7th concerning the tentative personal map number PM 2011-000 and the variance number V19111. So please, there are two major issues that the Planning Commission, based on that, and disapprove our request for a partial subdivision. As I present on this presentation, you see here is the first issue is about a tentative parcel map number. We have two parts for this. Number one, I present the facts and the findings consisting of 5 parts, and after that is our repudiatory presentation. For facts and findings, I show that this property has been bought about 18 years ago. And since the purchasing time, there is nothing improved or changing. There is already 2 dwelling units existing there since I bought the property. And our residential dwellings never create any detrimental to public welfare or inconvenience or safety housing for our neighbors. The only, and then another one is that in our application on the parcel subdivision map, as we present in the map that all the decorative design as well as improvement to really compatible with all the regulation and code of the city. There is nothing against the code. Lastly, the only obstacle against our request is our area shortage, and this is caused by a double city land cut off. The first one was about 10 years ago, and it was done by cutting 5 feet deep into my property, which is 500 square feet, and that was executed 10 years ago when the city of Garden Grove performing a program of repairs of roads and sewers. For this one, no restitution has been mentioned by the city of Garden Grove. And then after this first cutting, our area, our property was still measured 1,350 square feet, which is absolutely, there is no difficulty for our request of partial subdivision. The second land cutoff is a cutoff which is not yet executed, but planning for an undetermined date in the future. And this second cutting our land off is about 10 feet deep into our property. And after the second one, our property still measures 438 square feet. And
The lot number 1 is net 4,938 square feet. It is exactly at this shortage that the Planning Commission consider a disapproval of our request for partial subdivision. As we show in this page and the next page, we have no problem with any new improvement or any new change regarding the partial subdivision. The only thing is the area shortage of area shortage of lot number 1. And our research data revealed that in the vicinity of our area, there are many dwelling units of R3 zones having an area surface much smaller than ours. If you look at the table around here, we see that most of the 6 example we cite here, with the parcel number as well as the address, the area surface is much less than the one that we are having. Now, when comparing our area surface shortage of the lot number 1 with one parcel chosen by the Planning Commission as sample, the shortage area is only 5,000 square feet minus 4,938 square feet means 62 square feet shortage. That considering with the other areas, area of parcel in our vicinity, we would see that it still be pretty generous regarding area shortage. The second issue is variance, number V19111. The Planning Commission of the City of Garden Grove concurs with an approval of variance number V19111 does not create any material detriment to the public welfare nor any physically injurious matter for safe housing or convenience of neighboring vicinity. The only pivotal obstacle considered by the Planning Commission is that a granting of the variance number V19111 would set a precedent for special privilege over other properties owners in the future. We see that a generous and kind approval of our variance request could not be considered as a precedent for any illegal special privilege. Our area shortage in the lot number 1 is caused by the single claimant land cut-offs of the City of Garden Grove. And most of all, it is the future land cut-off of 1,000 square feet from our property to enlarge the sidewalk of Dale Street at an unknown future date of execution will be the determining cause of our area shortage difficulty. We see as highly unlikely that this type of land cut-off, with one in the past and another one planning 10 years afterwards, with an unknown date of execution, will reappear in the near future to use your kind granting approval as a precedent. And please read the last page. Sirs and madam, permit me, I am 75-year-old retired state employee after 20 years of public service. My health condition has been significantly decreased with many geriatric disorders. My wish is to bequeath my property to my children and to secure a harmonious relationship among them and to avoid any difficulty, dispute in the future. I strongly believe that my request for parcel subdivision would be a major step to solidify my wish. I herein honestly present my situation and respectfully entreat you to favor my request of parcel subdivision. Your granting approval reflects not only a fair compensation for my commercial value loss caused by the city land cutoff, but most of all, provide me a peace of mind during my later years at the end of my 20 years of public service to our state of California. My deep appreciation.
Okay, I have a question for you. You
Yes,
said
sir.
your wish is to bequeath my property to my children and secure a harmonious relationship among them and to avoid any difficult dispute in the future. What does that mean?
Well, basically, that means, sometimes when you leave, after you pass on some property in a vague situation.
How many children do you have?
I have 2 sons.
You have 2, and there's 3 units there already, so it seems like each one should...
No, this one is just asked to subdivide in 2 parcels. Lot number
How many
1.
units are there right now?
I'm sorry?
How many units are there right now?
Only 2.
Okay,
Only 2.
all right. Okay, anybody else have any questions, or gentlemen?
Question of staff.
We can, okay.
Yeah. Have we ever compensated Mr. Din? Mr. Din?
Yes.
For the cutoff for the street widening? And
I think what he was referring to, it's possible that on the first take 10 years ago, that might have been an acquired right-of-way. I can't verify that now, but based on what he spoke, it sounded like we acquired that right-of-way. The new right-of-way is a dedication as a requirement of this subdivision. So in that case, he would not be compensated. It would be a dedication.
Council, if we may, we do have understanding that on that 5 foot that there was never a compensation or dedication required 10 years ago. Is that correct, Chris?
That's correct.
oh, he mentioned, one sec. He also,
We don't.
There's no record of...
no compensation.
Correct.
Right. He also,
Is there any record
no.
of that area being taken?
Correct. There was no record of that area being taken, of the property,
Okay.
of the 500 feet that he's
There was
referring
no
to.
compensation because there was no property
taken.
taken, you're saying?
are we saying there's no take?
Checking with staff, there was no taking.
But is it true that he's going to be 5 feet short?
Well, there's a future dedication that's required. I guess what they're saying is his assertion that there was a previous one 10 years ago, we have not been able to verify that that was the case. So there's some contradiction or conflict as to whether that occurred or didn't.
How about previous to the 10-year, did we have that sidewalk?
There's no sidewalk there. Currently, there's no sidewalk there.
That's, Mr. Din, on the side that you said 500 feet was taken away,
500 square feet
Square
has
feet.
been taken
Right.
into my property.
what did
about
they
10 years
do?
ago.
What did they do with that 500 square feet?
What they do is that, number one, they would like to do 2 things. Number one is slightly enlarge the sidewalk.
So they haven't yet.
In order to perform a project of repairing the roads and the sewer.
Excuse me, addition. It's right now they have the sewer system in there, and you can when you come to the house, you see the big sewer window in there on the sidewalk with the metal rock above about 5 by 5. The big sewer.
You're saying the 500 feet space that he's talking about is now being used for the sewer system?
Yes.
And that sewer system belongs to whom?
city controls, yes.
Okay. I have a second question. He mentioned something about 5,000 square feet minus 4,900 something square feet, and he's short 62 square feet. Can you clarify what that means?
I'm not sure what he's referring to, but he's short 1,112 square feet. Well, prior to the taking, but the minimum requirement is 7,200 square feet for a lot on the R3 zone.
Could I clarify it so it is very clear at this point? After both land cut dedications, the lot number 1 will be net 4,938 square feet. The Planning Commission of the City of Garden Grove chose one dwelling unit in R3 zones of 5,000 square feet, and they consider that as a sample. And even if that consider that, the difference in surface area is 62 square feet. Namely, our area shortage is 62 square feet. And as we mentioned here, we do not see that such a small area can be reasonably accused as a considerable cause for any significant damage to public welfare or safety housing of our environment.
If I may cut you off, did we ever indicate it to Mr. Din that if he would have had like 5,000 square feet, he would have made the variance?
No, we did not.
Do we ever indicate, come up with any calculation for 5,000 square feet?
For this proposal, no. That we took in his application as is and evaluated on the basis of what he was proposing and weighing with the neighborhood and the existing lot sizes and lot widths and that, and formulated the city's position on whether the findings could be made or not made for his particular application. I'm not certain where he's coming up with the 5,000 square foot number.
And then the list of properties that he listed that had, in his vicinity, that had less than 5,000 square feet and is in the R3 zone, can we...
The one property on the list that he provides is within the proximity of his of the project location, and that is an alley. And the other properties, they're further away from the subject property.
On that one property, why is it that we give him, was it grandfathered in, or?
It's an abandoned alley at this currently. It's
not a lot.
Oh, it's not a lot.
Not a residential lot, no.
Okay, thank you.
I think the confusion is, for some reason, just as a benchmark, in the findings, the staff uses that states that there are no lots less than 5,000 square feet. I guess giving the impression that 5,000 would have been an acceptable lot size, when in fact they were just trying to use that as a unit of measure, that there isn't anything even less than 5,000. But the 5,000 really has no bearing as to that would have been an acceptable lot size. They just used it as a point of reference.
Oh, I see.
And I think that's where they're maybe misreading
I
that.
understand.
That if it was 5,000, it would have been acceptable.
Did we take into account the 1,000 square feet for future use when we look at his proposal?
You know, that argument might have been with merit, except that even with that, you're still, if the minimum lot size is 7,200, their lot is 4,938. You add the 11 something, they're still short over 1,000 feet.
Just to clarify, Lot 1, which is the substandard size, is 4,938, which is 2,262 square feet short of the minimum. Besides if you did, not including the dedication, it would have been 6,050, but because of the dedication, it is now 4,938 of developable area, and whilst the other lot meets code requirement of 7,500 square feet.
Excuse me, we have the lot is for 4,938 plus 1,000 cut up and 500 cut up and the last 10 years, so 1,500 square feet plus 4,938, we more than 72.
No, you're not more than 72.
No, it's still not. It's
Still short.
6,500. or something, but-
6,500.
But please, gentlemen, please look at the table showing the data of our research. You saw over here a lot of dwelling unit in R3 zones having first 4,743 square feet, 4,900 square feet only, 3,402 square feet, and 3,750 square feet. We have all the parcels number as well as the address showing which is very close vicinity of my property.
Have we measured these other properties he's talking about? And let me ask you a question. I mean, if we made a mistake on other properties, should we just go ahead and make another mistake? That would be my question, if they were that small.
Well, in looking at his list, we were handed this tonight, so I really would like to see the particular lots, to see where they're at, to see if there's any particular circumstances or whatever with them. And as Chris indicated, the first lot appears to be an alley that's in a commercial zone property, not an R3 zone lot. So with the other lots, I'm not exactly certain to where they're at and what the circumstances are. I'm just not.
Can we make a motion to continue this for 2 weeks so Carl can go out there and take a look at what's going on? I guess I can make a motion. I don't know whether I can get a second or not.
I'll second that.
What's the purpose of it? To go?
I have no idea. This gentleman is naming off properties that are much smaller than what we would allow. And that, because we allow other properties, we should allow him to have a smaller one. I don't know if that's a good argument or not. I mean,
Within proximity of the subject location, looking at a parcel map, there are properties within proximity ranging from 6,095 to 6,773 square feet, but nothing below 6,000 square feet for residential.
but he's naming there that are. I just think that we can check it out and either say he's right or he's wrong. If it's pertinent, which I'm not sure that it is, I mean, I still might vote against it. I mean, but I'd like to see what he's talking about.
I want to ask it another way, too, if they're going to go back and look at stuff. I mean, so basically, as proposed, you have this existing condition where you have two separate houses, two separate things. Is there a wall between Lot 1 and Lot 2 right now? Like, do they live and function as two separate properties right now?
Yes.
Just not from a technical planning standpoint, but in reality, if you go out there, there's the wall and there's two properties.
We have a fence separating two dwelling unit.
Can't tell between the homes there.
So you have Lot 2 that's 7,500, so that's 300 square feet over the required code minimum for a lot. You've got the other one that's 4,938. Presumably, you can't stretch into that unless you're cutting into the side yard setback a lot, too. Otherwise, you'd pick up the 300 feet that Lot 2 is over. And then you've got 1,000 feet worth of dedication. So you're talking about a 7,500 square foot lot and give or take a 6,000 square foot lot, which is a 6,000 square foot lot is a respectable lot size. I mean, my general question is what does this hurt, or why not let him do what he wants to do? What's the big deal?
It becomes more technical. To grant a variance, you have to meet those findings. And so, in that case, we couldn't.
Isn't the taking in and of itself that we're proposing to do, forget about the 500 feet that may or may not have happened 10 years ago, but just the 1,000 feet that would have to be dedicated along with this. Is that
I would
of a justification for
use that argument if it met the minimum prior to the taking, but even prior to the taking, he's still 1,000 feet off. So I think that's where it becomes a little problematic.
What I'm guessing is there wasn't a 500-foot actual widening or taking before, but there was some piece of sort of public equipment that was put into that front yard setback of the property. So it wasn't like 500 feet was actually taken, but there was maybe some sort of, whatever you said, sewer thing or something that was.
So I don't know, maybe there's an easement that now exists.
Well, you
for
know,
that.
most likely, at one point or another, was county territory, too. And so I don't know what that would have to do, if anything, with the sewer system that it sounds like he's talking about.
If I had a vote today with all the evidence presented, I think we put him in that position. The taking and the future taking has made his requirement, instead of a variance for 700 square feet, now it's a variance for a lot more than that. It's substantially less than 700 square feet. And I know we have lots in the past that we approved that has like from 500 to 1,000 square feet short. So if we didn't benefit, the city didn't benefit from that, I probably wouldn't go with that, because the other lots that are smaller probably didn't benefit the city. But in this case, he is benefiting our city, and we're not paying him for anything. And when he bought this property, way before our plan to take those side streets, I don't think he had in mind that he's going to be in this predicament. So because of that, if we were to vote today, I would vote yes for his request, but I don't mind continuing if some of the council member wants to look at the lots, why we grant the other lots, those variants. And like Council Member Jones, I agree with him. Why do we even need to look into that? So that's my position today.
One other angle on this thing, too, is just that if this doesn't go forward as they're asking, then at some point in the future, if or when we ever did want to widen that street and we do want to take that 1,000 feet, then we're going to have to go compensate them for it at that time, whereas it's part of the trade right now. I mean, they're voluntarily
I think if there's
giving up the 1,000 feet now in exchange for this entitlement.
Yeah. Taking that information into account and factoring in the dedication, if you believe that that has a basis for reevaluating the variance, I think we could reassess this based on prior to the taking and after the taking, and return with a different recommendation.
Mr. Mayor, the motion is to do some fact-finding?
Yeah.
And then that fact-finding will have a bearing on the...
Well, and also, with the, I don't know if you direct it or just make a comment, that we factor in the effects of the pre- and post-dedication as a consideration in coming back with any findings.
What is the taking for? What's the purpose
Street
of
widening,
taking?
future street
The street widening.
That's street widening on Acacia or on Dale?
Dale Street.
Dale.
Which, I mean, is obvious that at some point it's going to happen. It should happen, and as traffic, as everything, increases there. I would wonder then, too, where he wants to do his addition, where that fits in, and I want to go out and look at it myself, too, but I want to see where that fits in, because if it were in a place that would definitely be affected later if there is a widening, I mean, we're paying, maybe we're doing something twice that we could handle once.
Let me rephrase my motion then.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'll move that we do not continue the public hearing, but we just continue the discussion. I mean, we've had the public hearing, so we don't have to do another public hearing. And we continue the discussion until whoever wants to go out and take a look at it. And I would like Carl to take a look at it, and then we'll get back to it in 2 weeks. That's my motion.
I second that motion.
Okay. A motion is second. All in favor? Okay, I think that's everything, other than matters. Mr. Broadwater. You can sit down. We're done. No, we're done. We're conducting the meeting.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Let me look at my notes. I have nothing this evening.
Okay, Ms. Nguyen.
Yes. First of all, happy anniversary to
Thank
Mr.
you.
Dalton and his wife, Sandy. 50 years. Very golden. It's golden, right?
Yes. That means you have to give me some gold.
Some of the comments today was traffic on Harbor Boulevard. If we could staff would take note of those traffic comments and refer it back to Public Works so they can look into the traffic matters. And then there were some comments regarding jobs in the city, and we do a wonderful job in this agency. And for development of hotels and businesses, I wanted to see if staff could somehow find some professional expert into industrial and commercial development, so we can develop those areas just like we would develop the tourist area for a different type of jobs in the city. I wanted to mention also last weekend was the the 9/11 10-year anniversary. Very sad moment, and I remember that day. Very, very emotional, and I still do remember that, and it gets me emotional, and it's the first time I realized I feel so American, I feel so intruded and violated and defensive. And so that was my feeling at the time. I still feel that way every time we mention the security of our nation. Usually, this is not on Tony Flores, because he usually writes and all the things that he brings to the city, his concerns, and we appreciate that. But today he read an article regarding the 1st District, and Janet Nguyen and I have been on different sides of the fence. But this time I have to pretty much defend her. And my pet peeve is the race card. Anytime anyone uses that, I get very irritated and very offended. They should remember that Janet Nguyen is not the only...
Excuse me. Can you please, if you need to talk, go outside? Thank you. Go ahead.
They should remember that Janet Nguyen is not the only member on the supervisory board that voted for that district. It's a 5-member board. All 5 are responsible. And the fact that they mention only her name makes me think who wrote this article and what was the intention. And it gave the suggestion of a racial device, and that Mr. Flores picked that up, and that was not to the best interest of this community, of the city of Garden Grove, because we're a united community, and our district was divided based on the economic interests that everyone had that are the same, and based on the values that everyone have that are the same. That's all I have to say, and be sure to buy in Garden Grove. We have lots and lots new stores opening up lately, which shows that there's a boost in the economy, and our city is doing much better than the last year.
Thank you. Mr. Jones.
Just want to say a happy 50th anniversary to the mayor. You guys might just make it.
Thank you. Wait a minute, you said what?
You guys might just make it.
Oh, okay. Well, you never know. It's a day-to-day thing. No. Mr. Beard.
Just a couple comments. I want to mention that I attended the Children's Moon Festival this past weekend. It was very enjoyable. It was the first time here in the city, and it was well attended for a first-time event, and I was happy to be there, and I had a good time. Second thing is, we talked about the September 11th remembrance, and I want to commend and compliment the Elks Lodge. They brought in a lot of Elks members throughout Orange County to attend a ceremony held at the Garden Grove Elks Club. Mr. Mitchell was there. And then a special thanks to our own Garden Grove Fire Department. I got special thanks from the Elks themselves for having them attend. We were able to recognize them, which was a good opportunity for us as citizens and Elks to do so. But also they put on a display of fire trucks to commemorate and with a flag. And so it was a nicely done touch for the ceremony. I just want to thank them for doing that, the chief and all the firefighters who came out that day. And again, I also want to wish you a happy anniversary.
Thank you. Okay, well, happy anniversary, Sandy. It's been a wonderful 50 years, and we'll start on our second now. And I'm going to go ahead and actually, I'll adjourn the meeting.
Woman.
Huh?
That poor woman.
Yeah. I'll adjourn the meeting in honor of my wife, Sandy. And the next regular meeting of the council will be on Tuesday, September 27th, 2011, 5:30 p.m. here. Thank you.